A powerful bird, consumed by flames, rises again from its ashes. What can this mythical creature teach us about our own struggles, our fears, and the chance for rebirth? Stay with us as we uncover the lesson of the phoenix, and how even in our darkest moments, we too can rise. The sun hung low in the sky over Galilee, casting long shadows over the rolling hills and turning the earth beneath their feet a soft orange hue. The air was warm, but a gentle breeze stirred the dry grass, carrying the promise of evening. The disciples made their way along the narrow path, each step a reminder of the long journey they had taken. It had been a day of travel and toil, and they were weary, their robes dusty from the road. Yet there was something different in the air today, a sense of stillness as if the world itself had paused for just a moment. The campfire crackled before them, its flame casting flickering shadows across the disciples' faces. They gathered around it, finding solace in its warmth. The embers glowed red and yellow, the smell of burning wood mixing with the fresh night air. There was comfort in the fire, in the quiet evening, but an unease lingered just beneath the surface. It was a feeling of anticipation, as though something profound was about to be shared. Peter, always the first to speak, threw a stone into the flames, watching as it hissed and disappeared into the fire. His eyes were bright with curiosity, a slight furrow in his brow. "Master, what is it you wish to share with us tonight?" he asked, the eagerness in his voice unmistakable. There was always something in the air when Jesus spoke, a weight, a depth that made them listen intently like children waiting for a lesson. Jesus, sitting across from them, his legs crossed and hands resting on his knees, studied the faces of his disciples. Each one was weary in their own way, some from their physical journey, others from the battles they fought within. Yet all were longing for something, some deeper understanding of the path they walked. Jesus' eyes softened with compassion. "Tonight I will tell you a story of rebirth, a story of the phoenix," he said. The disciples exchanged glances. A bird? Some mythical creature? What could it mean? But Jesus' words were like a magnet, pulling them closer to the fire of his wisdom. His stories always had a way of unraveling the mysteries of life, even when they seemed strange at first. "The phoenix," Jesus began, his voice steady, "is a bird that lives for many years, soaring across the skies with grace and beauty, its feathers gleaming like gold in the light of the sun. It is a creature of strength, known for its majesty and power. But as the years pass, as all things must, the phoenix grows weary. Its wings, once light and effortless, become heavy with age. The brightness of its feathers fades, and its spirit, though still powerful, begins to dull." Jesus paused for a moment, his eyes scanning the faces of his disciples. Matthew, the quiet tax collector, sat with his hands folded, his gaze fixed on the fire, but his mind clearly elsewhere. John, the youngest of them, looked up at Jesus with an intensity that seemed to drink in every word. The others listened carefully, each man lost in his own thoughts, contemplating what this bird's tale might mean for them. Jesus continued, "When the phoenix feels that its time has come, it seeks out the highest mountain it can find, a place of solitude and peace. There it builds a nest from the most fragrant herbs, and it sets itself on fire. The flames consume its body, turning it to ash. For a time there is nothing. No bird. No life." The disciples shifted uneasily, their thoughts troubled. Was this a story of death? Of destruction? But Jesus added softly, his voice like a balm to their growing discomfort, "This is not the end. For from the very ashes that were left behind, a new phoenix is born. It rises reborn, stronger, brighter, and more beautiful than before. And this cycle of death and rebirth continues for as long as the phoenix lives." The fire crackled between them, its bright light reflected in their eyes. Silence fell over the group, each man processing the story in his own way. What could a bird born from fire mean for their own lives? Would they too be able to rise again after the trials they faced? As the evening wore on and the fire slowly died down to a few glowing embers, the disciples sat in deep reflection. The story of the phoenix had struck a chord with each of them. It wasn't just a story of a mythical bird, it was a story of transformation, of struggle, and of triumph. And each disciple carried within them their own struggles, moments of fear, shame, and doubt. Peter, ever the restless one, could not keep his thoughts to himself. He stood up, pacing in the soft earth beside the fire. His voice was rough, tinged with frustration. "Master, you speak of a bird reborn from the ashes, but what if we can't rise again? What if the fire is too much for us? I've failed before, denied you, betrayed you in my heart when I should have stood strong." His words came fast as though he couldn't stop them. "How can I ever rise from that?" Jesus watched Peter carefully, his gaze filled with compassion. "Peter, you have known fire. You have known pain. But do not forget this: the phoenix does not rise alone. It rises because it trusts the fire. It trusts that the flames will burn away what is unnecessary, what no longer serves it, and leave only what remains strong. You will rise because you too have a purpose." Peter stopped pacing, his head down, absorbing the weight of Jesus' words. He had never been good at trusting, especially when it came to his own flaws. The guilt of his past mistakes had weighed him down for so long. Could he really believe that he could rise from the ashes of his own failure? John, sensing Peter's struggle, leaned forward. His voice was calm and thoughtful. "But Master," he asked, "what if the ashes never fade? What if we are left only with scars of what we've lost, with the remnants of who we once were?" Jesus smiled gently, his voice soft yet unwavering. "John, the scars are not marks of defeat. They are the proof that you endured, that you fought. They are not what you should fear. The fire may burn, but the ashes are not the end. The scars are a reminder of what you've overcome. You are not defined by what you have lost, but by what you choose to rise toward. Choose to rise, and the ashes will be a symbol of your strength, not your failure." For the first time in a long while, the disciples felt the weight of their burdens begin to lift. Perhaps they had not been condemned to their past. Perhaps the fire could purify them as it had the phoenix. The following morning, the sun rose over the hills with a new promise. The disciples, though weary, were determined. They had learned something the night before, a lesson that would stay with them on the road ahead, that no matter the trials they faced, they could rise again. But life, as it often does, had another lesson to teach them. As they journeyed through a dense forest, the group was suddenly ambushed by a band of raiders. Their leader, a man whose face was scarred with the marks of battle, sneered at them. "Give us what you have and we'll let you go. But if you resist—" His voice trailed off as he made a crude gesture with his blade. Peter, his heart racing, instinctively reached for his sword. The fear surged back. Fear of failure, fear of being powerless. Could he truly rise above this moment? Jesus, sensing the fear in his disciples, stepped forward. "Do not be afraid," he said quietly but firmly. "This is the fire you must face. You will rise from this, just as the phoenix rises from the ashes." The fight was swift and brutal. The disciples were outnumbered, but their courage grew as the battle raged. Peter, his sword now in hand, fought with a fierceness he didn't know he had. His movements, once hesitant, became fluid and precise. He was no longer afraid. After the raiders fled, the disciples stood in the aftermath, bruised but victorious. The fire of battle had tested them, but they had not been consumed. They had endured, and for the first time they realized the truth. They were capable of rising, even in the face of their deepest fears. The night after the battle, as the disciples gathered around the fire, there was a different energy between them. They were tired, yes, but also lighter. They had faced their fears head-on and emerged stronger. Yet even in this newfound strength, Peter still carried the weight of his past mistakes. His mind kept returning to the times he had faltered, the times he had denied Jesus. Could he truly rise from those ashes? Jesus, sensing Peter's turmoil, walked over to where he sat. The others were engaged in quiet conversation, but Peter was lost in thought. "Peter," Jesus said softly, sitting beside him, "You fought well today. You did not shy away from the fire. You did not run from the battle." Peter looked down at the ground, his voice low. "But I've failed before, Master. I've betrayed you. I've turned away when you needed me most. How can I rise from that?" Jesus placed a hand on his shoulder, his touch gentle yet firm. "Peter, your failures are not the end of you. They are part of your story, yes. But you are not defined by them. The fire burns away what is unnecessary, what no longer serves you. And what remains? What remains is you, the real you. And from that you will rise." Peter met Jesus' eyes, the weight of his past lifting ever so slightly. Could he really rise again? Could he believe that he was not beyond redemption? Slowly he allowed the truth to sink in. He had not been abandoned. He had not been cast aside. The phoenix could rise, and so could he. The following morning the journey continued. As they traveled through a rugged landscape, Jesus led them to the base of a towering mountain. Its peak was hidden in the clouds, and the path ahead was steep and treacherous. The mountain stood like a silent sentinel before them, imposing and formidable. "This mountain represents the trials of life," Jesus said, his voice clear and unwavering. "It will test your strength. It will push you to your limits. But if you endure, if you climb with faith, you will see things from a new perspective. You will understand the purpose of the fire." The disciples looked up at the mountain, each one feeling a mixture of fear and determination. The climb would not be easy, but they had learned, through fire and struggle, that they were capable of more than they knew. It was time to rise. The climb was grueling. The path was rocky, the air thin and heavy with the weight of their own exhaustion. The disciples struggled with each step, their hands gripping the rough stone as they made their way upward. The mountain seemed endless, the summit always just out of reach. Each man grew silent, focused on putting one foot in front of the other. But it was in their struggle that they found their strength. Peter, struggling with his own doubts, found solace in the presence of his companions. When he faltered, John was there to steady him, offering words of encouragement. "You are not alone in this, Peter," John said quietly. "We are all here climbing together." Peter nodded, his heart swelling with a sense of camaraderie. For the first time he understood that rising was not something he had to do alone. The others too had their struggles, their fears. But together they were stronger. By the time they reached the summit, the sun was beginning to set, casting a golden light across the world below. The air was crisp and the view stretched for miles, vibrant fields, rolling hills, and distant mountains. It was a breathtaking sight, but it was more than just a physical view. The climb had changed them. They saw the world differently now, from a higher perspective. Jesus stood beside them, his face serene. "You have climbed this mountain not just for the view but for the strength it gives you. The climb represents the trials you will face in life, the obstacles that seem insurmountable. But the view is your reward. It is the perspective you gain when you rise above it all." The disciples stood in awe, the significance of the climb sinking in. They had faced trials and they had risen. The ashes had not consumed them, they had been purified by them. And now, standing at the summit, they saw with new eyes the world they were meant to change. This is end of the story. Comment Amen if you believe in Jesus' blessings. Please like this video and subscribe this channel for more Jesus story like this. May the God watch over you.